goals will write themselves. If we have good, solid data, we shouldn't have a problem coming up with what the goal should be, and it should be very, very explicit. I'm kind of using data collection and progress monitoring as interchangeable things today. I know there's a difference. We're going to talk about it a little bit. The important thing is that teacher observation is not data until it's written down. And there's a system for evaluating it, but I would say the most important thing is it needs to be written down, collected in some way, and documented. The other thing, back to the consistency issue again, data collection for special needs students should be from kind of daily, ongoing work in the curriculum rather than contrived tools. I have feelings both ways about that. I think that there are appropriate times when you might want to use a tool, and it would be effective to use a tool. I also think that if that's a snapshot and that's not reflective of really what that child does, it would be appropriate to use that other information as well. So I don't want to throw everything out with that. I think that there is a place for a combination of both things, but the most important part is that the data that you're reflecting really, or talking about, really needs to be reflective of the ongoing things that that child does. So when we're reporting data, how much data do we need to reliably report progress? You need enough to see trends in behavior, and I think this is where we were having difficulty in our district too. Okay, we're going to collect data, but really, you want me to do it frequently? You want me to do it every 2 weeks? You want me to how often do you want me to do this? How often do you want me to write it down? But you do have to do it enough to see the trends. So a good rule of thumb is a minimum of one time a month. And I'm talking more about not necessarily the district-wide benchmarks, or I guess Dr. Lemke was calling them screenings. We call them benchmarks. Whatever those 3 times a year or the quarterly things you do. I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about children that you've identified that you're really following in terms of goals and things like that. And then depending maybe on the severity of the behavior, again, you might do it up to 1 time a day, or maybe even on a half-day kind of basis. Then it's going to help you to evaluate the IEP's effectiveness. You're going to intervene and adjust your intervention, and then you can report the findings to all the parties. These are the things you're going to ask yourself once you have the data. So is the student progressive? Do we need to make changes? I think this is difficult. I think there are professions where folks have been trained in the thought processes to constantly reflect and look and do a task analysis and try to figure out what's either working or not working for that student. And I think sometimes there are folks who that's not been a focus of their instruction and their training. So we've had to do a little work to kind of teach people to look and dig deeper, and what does that mean for instruction. So when you are looking at your data that you have plotted, if you have 3 data points below the line, something needs to change, as long as you have that data really pretty frequently on a regular basis. If you have 4 data points above, the goal is met, and you need to raise the expectations. And this morning I brought up the fact that sometimes I will hear teachers say in case conferences, well, if they meet the goals, we'll just make it a little harder for them. Well, actually, or we'll take away some of the supports, whatever. Actually, no. If they meet the goal, you really need to meet again and develop new goals. Hopefully, because we're kind of used to thinking in terms of a year and developing goals for that, then if you've done it a while, you're pretty good at that. So hopefully you won't be meeting several times a year and rewriting goals. But when you look at children who have developmental delay, one of the big issues, and we've kind of been using this word incorrectly for many, many years, but dismissal, either from speech impairment, language impairment, developmental delay, it's kind of an issue. And I think because we've used this word dismissal, we've sort of done people, mostly parents, a disservice What we're really talking about, as you know, is ineligibility. And so, to determine that somebody is ineligible, number one, you have to do a reevaluation. Now, we met with a lot of resistance when we went here with our speech pathologists. They were like, what? You mean I have to retest every student that I'm getting ready to dismiss? And we said, reevaluation can be a look at the data that you have, and an ongoing look at the data. What you do have to do is create that notice of reevaluation, because it's more importantly, it's about giving the parents prior written notice that that's what you're going to do. It's the process is all it is. But you are actually going to do the same things. You're going to look at that data. Sometimes it would be appropriate to do formal assessments again if you really wanted to. But again, I go back to that. Sometimes the score is not reflective of what a child needs to do in a classroom. And then some of the things, we're going to talk a little bit more about guiding questions in a few minutes, but some of the things you might want to think about and address, maybe not that first one, address in the present levels are, why would you be hesitant to address that ineligibility? And the other conclusion that we came to as we kind of started to talk about this a little bit is, for students who have speech impairment and language impairment and developmental delay, I kind of feel like you need to set the stage from the very beginning that this is an eligibility category that is possibly not going to be there for forever. This morning in a session, someone made a really good point, talked about how a student might be identified for speech language impairment and have some accommodations for ISTEP. So then, when they get to middle school level, parents don't want to even consider ineligibility because that might then remove those accommodations. So we kind of went back to the fact that, first of all, if you're taking really good data about the use of accommodations, and the child is either using them on an ongoing basis, because you don't just apply accommodations for the assessment, then you would have data about that, and then there wouldn't be that issue. But we all know it happens.